Greetings and shalom. I'm Adrian Scott, and I welcome you to Truth and Testimony, the broadcast. It is time for some more shekels for your thoughts. And the topic of today's episode is going to be on prayer. And there's a lot to be said about this. I'm not going to meander on too much, I don't hope. I do have a tendency to go down rabbit holes sometimes, but I'm going to try and stick to the point here. And some things I just want to cover is this idea of, first off, the importance of prayer, the relevance of prayer, the impact of prayer, and the power of prayer. So I'll start by saying this. There is an observation that I have made about the Bible. Again, I've read through numerous times. There's people out there that have read the Bible a lot more than I have, but I have read through it numerous times, and there's some trends that I notice. And one of the trends that I noticed, which I make a statement about, is this idea that throughout the portions of the New Testament, when Yeshua was in his earthly ministry, I noted that he was continually, very, very frequently in prayer. And this is an individual who, yes, he was fully man, but he was also fully God. So here's God in the flesh, who's come to dwell and tabernacle amongst us. And he, sinless as he was, in order to pay the penalty for us breaking the covenant, still felt the need to be in prayer all the time. And, right up to the disciples, I call it the disciples' prayer. It's probably more commonly known as the Lord's Prayer, but it's when he was teaching his disciples how to pray. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. We know the prayer. So with, that he did it all the time, he was teaching his disciples how to pray properly, how to do it well, and demonstrating and being an example for everyone around him of prayer. Now, if he felt the need to pray that much, how much more do we need it? I'll leave you with that question for a minute. So that's an observation that I made. If you look in the Jewish culture, and in Orthodox Judaism, more specifically, I should say there are elements of Orthodox Judaism that I strongly disagree with and that I have real concern about. Like I'm perfect. I certainly am not saying that. I know I have my own faults. But when I just have a plain reading of the Bible and I see what it says, and then I see some of what they're doing, and it does not seem to line up to the Bible. Not the way I read it. So could I potentially be wrong? Maybe. I don't think so. But I acknowledge that it is possible. However, and having said that, I don't want to sit here and rain on the Orthodox all day long. There are many things that they do that I think they do really well. And I think in those moments, that's when you're getting a little glimpse at God's chosen people. One way or the other, in obedience or disobedience, they are his chosen people. They have always been his chosen people, and they will remain that way. They may be disciplined. They may be exiled from the land at different points in history and need to be gathered in, and other things like that may happen, but they don't stop being his chosen people. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. But when you see some of the things they do, I think it very strongly lines up with that. And I try to get those examples and lean into them when I can. And one of the things is their devotion to prayer. The importance of prayer, I don't know that it could be overstated. it is so profound. Through prayer, people have been healed. Straight up, fact. Mic drop. Through prayer, people have been healed. And I'm talking not just, they were in a bad mood or they kind of had a cold or something like that. I'm talking major illnesses. Obviously things like blindness, as we read in the Bible, deafness. But I mean, we could go right up to serious diseases. I remember, this is one example of a testimony that I heard. There was a Hebrew roots speaker that I very, very much respect and enjoy listening to. And I was blessed to have the opportunity to see a couple of his conferences. And I would have liked to have seen more, but I'm certainly happy to have seen the ones that I did, to have that opportunity. But he recounted a story about how he was doing a conference at this one particular, I don't know if it was in a church. They might have rented a community hall or something like that. But he was doing a conference anyways, Hebrew Roots Conference. And most times those conferences would pretty much run all weekend. You would show up Friday evening, which in the Messianic Hebrew Roots thought is the beginning of the Sabbath, and would run through until Saturday evening. There's different interpretations of what time to what time. The Bible says sundown to sundown, but there's a lot to be said about that. I'm not going to unpack all of that right now. But whenever particular groups start and stop their Shabbat, the Shabbat starts Friday evening and ends Saturday evening. That's it. But they'll continue even teaching into Sunday, and they'll make it a full weekend show. Often, I mean, it's nice because on the Shabbat, on the Saturday, they will teach, but there won't be anything for sale because it's a day of rest. We're not to spend money. We're not to have servants. The servants are to rest as well. So, we abstain from all of those things, and there's no purchasing of stuff on that day. And that's generally one of the conditions that most people, I think, generally tend to follow. But then on Sunday, they'll have the opportunity to open up their tables and sell their teachings on DVDs and any other merchandise that they might have available. Usually teachings, books, resources like that. Sometimes some other stuff. But so it would run all weekend. That's the long and short of it. The long and short of it. Is that the right? Is that the right? Short and skinny. Whatever. That's the summary of it. There we go. That's the summary of it, is they'll often run all weekend. And such was the case here. And one of the people that went to this one particular conference from this individual was paraplegic and arrived in a wheelchair. Long story short, at the end of the conference, I don't remember all the details, but ultimately this person left the conference no longer in a wheelchair. This wasn't someone with weak legs. This was a paraplegic. They had lost the use of their legs. And now they stood up out of their wheelchair. I think that was it. They saw the empty wheelchair and they were wondering what happened. And somebody said they saw them walk out of this conference. So they showed up in a wheelchair and they left not in a wheelchair. And there's lots of prayers throughout those conferences. They'll often do prayers over break times and stuff like that. There's a passage in the Bible that says, when you have eaten and are satisfied, give thanks to God for the land and the crops that he's blessed you with, all of the abundance of food that you have. And that in itself is another little prayer. There's morning prayers, there's evening prayers, there's prayers to start the Shabbat, there's prayers to start the different appointed days of Yehovah, of Yahweh. So there's, the opportunities are almost boundless. And as I was saying, I mean, it does show that prayer has healed people. Prayer also recharges you. It reinvigorates you. It is that communication bridge to the Father. And that in and of itself can completely turn someone's day or week around. It is healing. It is therapeutic. Yeah, it's an amazing thing to do. My wife and I, in our house, we say a prayer every night before we're going to bed, and we include the kids with this. This is something we like to do as a family. In the morning, before we even get out of bed, the alarm goes off. We'll lay there for a minute, kind of wake up a little bit, and then the wife and I will do our own little private prayer to start the day. And as I'm driving to work, I'll be offering up a prayer and communicating with my Father in heaven. On my way home, I will do the same thing. As opportunities present themselves, even at my work, I will take an opportunity right there, and I'll say a little prayer. And there's in our estimation, the way we do it, there's different kinds of prayers. I think probably the one that we lean on the most are just prayers of gratitude. So I guess that's another point, is there's different kinds of prayer for different purposes. I think prayers of gratitude are a big one. Particularly, it's easy to be thankful when things are going well. But if you're having a particularly bad day or a bad week or a bad month or a bad year, right? To take an opportunity to pray to the Father and thank Him anyway. Because you know what? Part of what He does is He introduces those trials and tribulations to test you, to see if you're willing to follow Him and follow His word. It's not a punishment. It is a refining. It is a strengthening. It is an education. It is teaching wisdom and patience. So even on those bad times, in fact, maybe in those bad times, it's even bigger time to do those prayers of gratitude. There's also prayers of petition. This is where, somebody is ill and they're asking, can you please, ask your church or your community or whatever, can you pray for this person for healing? And so there's prayers of petition that maybe we're hoping to do a very significant trip in the end of 2025 here. As of the recording of this, we're in August of 2025. So towards the end of the year, we have big plans for a trip. And this is not going to be an inexpensive trip. But the main reason we want to do this is my wife's mother is on the older side and her health is in decline. And this is something she has asked. She'd like to do this. She'd like to have this family function. And we don't want to miss that opportunity. And then something, God forbid, happens to her sooner rather than later. We'd like her to be around as long as utterly possible. But that something did happen. And then we'd constantly have this regret, that why didn't we do it? Why couldn't we see her? And now you've missed out on that opportunity that you can never get again here in this lifetime. And so, we have been very much in prayer that the provisions needed will be there for us to do this. We're doing everything we can, but times are tough for a lot of people, and it's no different for us. It's not like we're swimming in money over here. We're very blessed, but it's still tight from time to time. And so we are praying about that. We're praying that provision will be made for us to be able to do this trip. Not so that we can spend money, but so that we can spend this time with her mother that, like I said, if anything were to happen, we'd have that opportunity. She could have that time with us. We could have that time with her, because I know a lot of people personally that have had opportunities where they've lost a close person to them, a direct family member or a friend or something, and they didn't have that opportunity. And they just, unfortunately, can often live in a lot of regret that they didn't take the opportunity. On the flip side, I know people that have had that opportunity, and they're so thankful that they did have that opportunity. It doesn't make the loss any easier, but there was a connection. There was a closing. When you don't have that opportunity to say goodbye, as it were, when you do, that makes a big difference. So prayers of petition to allow for stuff like that, prayers of blessing. Yeah. Those are probably the big ones for us are the prayers of gratitude, prayers of petition, and prayers of blessing. And when I say blessing, like one of the big ones for us is and it's kind of a traditional sort of Orthodox Jewish prayer, which is praying for the peace of Jerusalem and the restoration of Israel. And from our standpoint, I mean, the whole point of that is when those things happen, that is drawing the Bible towards its conclusion. And as another speaker said on one time, it's like, I've read the Bible. I've read ahead. I've read the whole thing. And guess what? We win, So we know what's going to come at the end. There's going to be a rough time to get there, but we know what's coming at the end. And we win, So just pray for that blessing, that people would have the opportunity to find their way to God if they've left that path, to find their way back to the path, to have someone put in their path that can help lead them there. That's another quick little one. Oftentimes people have thought that the primary function of a prophet in the Bible was to foretell the future. But my understanding is that's not the primary function. The primary function of the prophet was to lead the people back to God, right? And then ultimately, if you did not go back to God, if you did not repent, if you did not get back into that sheepfold, then he would tell you what the outcome would be. Then he would tell your future. But the main function was to be that shepherd, that would a shepherd to lead people back into the flock, to keep them in the sheepfold. Because one thing that I think is one of the truest statements I've ever said, there is straight up nowhere safer to be. There is nowhere safer to be than in the will of God. Right? Having said that, it doesn't mean good and bad things can't happen to you, but it's still the safest place to be is in the will of God. And the prophet's job was to get people back to that point. That was the primary function. So prayers of gratitude for all those things to happen, for the sun and the rain, for, the seasons in their times, for safe travels, all of those things. Yeah, so prayer. And as nice as it is to be able to pray with others, don't be afraid to pray on your own, right? I think God's got a pretty good attention span. He can listen to you pray frequently. But I think the big thing is come from the heart, right? This is one of the issues that I can have with some people where it's like they're almost praying out of obligation. They're doing it out of rote rather than out of desire. And to me, that can be a problem because ultimately, for all of our shortcomings and everything else, God is judging the heart. Having said all of that, I encourage you, say a prayer tonight. If you've got a family, you say it with your family. If you can call someone, call them and do it. If you don't have any of that, pray on your own. But pray. End your day with a prayer. Start your day with a prayer. And as the opportunities present themselves, don't be afraid to take them. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be in a fancy format or anything else. It's just as simple as our Father in heaven, thank you for today. Thank you for all of the blessings that you give us. Thank you for our daily bread. We pray for your kingdom come and your will to be done on this earth as it is in heaven. The Messiah said it so well. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to share, and if you have not done so yet, subscribe, hit that notification bell to all so that you're notified to all of the videos that we are posting, and we've got lots of stuff coming up, so you don't want to miss it. On that, I do wish blessings on all of you in the name of our Messiah, Yeshua, and I say shalom, have a great week, and bye for now.